Hello, white people. Look at these shit stains that NBC News have posted. Noah Berlatsky, probably another Berg. Trump voters motivated by racism may be violating the Constitution. Can they be stopped? Republicans and Democrats alike have been unwilling to reprimand voters or to hold them accountable, but racist voting isn't an accident. Oh my God, these spin doctors are something else. This is President Donald Trump at a rally at El Paso, February 11th, 2019. Oh, it's today. And this is dated January 17th, 2020, this article. If the Trump era has taught us anything, it's that large numbers of white people in the United States are motivated, at least in part, by racism in the voting booth. Donald Trump ran an openly racist campaign for president, calling Mexicans rapists and criminals, regularly retweeting white supremacists, and at least initially balking at repudiating former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke. Trump made it clear in his campaign that Make America Great Again meant that America was greater when white people's power was more sweeping and more secure. White voters approved of that message by a whopping 58% to 37%. Now, wait a second here. I thought that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. What are they saying here, huh? Some politicians deny the evidence, no doubt, because they don't want to alienate white voters, including prejudiced ones. Other commentators try to parse whether Trump's racism will be a winning strategy in 2020. Terry Smith, a visiting professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law, offers a different response in his new book, White Lash and Masking White Grievance at the Ballot Box. Rather than excuse racist voters or try to figure out how to live with their choices, he argues that racist voting is not just immoral but illegal. The government, Smith says, has the ability and the responsibility to address it. I want to stop right here and let you guys know this is exactly what Mao Zedong did in China. This is how he was able to get the proletariat to hate the bourgeois. And the bourgeois were not anybody fancy. They were just the regular working class people who were a little bit smarter than the rest of the population, the smarter upper half of the population, not the elites, not these super rich people, but just regular working class, the middle class and higher to upper middle class people. These are the ones that the proletariat are conditioned to hate. And continuing on here, this sounds radical, but Smith argues that it's in line with the Constitution and with years of court rulings. For example, Smith points out that racist appeals in union elections are illegal, and that an election in which one side uses racist appeals can be invalidated by the National Labor Relations Board. Similarly, in 2016 case Pena versus Rodriguez, the Supreme Court ruled that when a juror expresses overt bigotry, the jury's verdict should be invalidated. What the hell? When voters go to the booth, they're not expressing a mere personal preference, Smith told me. According to Smith, voters who pull the levers to harm black people are violating the Constitution. Pulling a lever to harm black people. Wow. Wow, just making these outrageous statements. This is our mainstream media saying shit like this, planting these seeds of fear and hatred and division between people. And you wonder why we have all these problems in our nation. These people are out of control and need to be shut down. But the good thing is that the more that they double down on this whole racist crap, the more white people are waking up and they're getting sick and tired of it. I know some white people are feeling guilty and they just double down on feeling guilt. That's just a flaw in their genetics. We can't do anything about that. But normal people who don't have access to alternative media are shutting this shit down and saying, fuck you. Even if they hate Trump and they hate Republicans, they're not going to deal with this crap. If the Constitution means that overt racist appeals undermine the legality of union elections, it stands to reason that they undermine the legality of other elections as well. So, How can you tell when voters are acting out of prejudice? Again, Smith says, employment discrimination law provides a useful analogy. In discrimination cases, courts look for pretexts. If someone gives a reason for a hiring decision that is obviously false or makes little sense in context, the court has good reason to believe that prejudice or bias may have influenced the hiring decision. Trump's unprecedented, compulsive, easily documented lying during the 26 campaign. Okay, easily documented lying, because they never say what he's lying about. They just say he's a liar. Made him an irrational choice. See, they're just making all this shit up with no facts or anything behind it. And I'm not saying that Trump hasn't lied, but the fake opposition here is just causing trouble. It's reasonable to conclude that voters were willing to swallow the falsehoods because they liked what they heard. Overt racist appeals and incessant lies about rising crime rates. Research has since suggested that plenty of Trump voters were indeed strongly motivated by racist resentment and anti-immigrant animus. The usual remedy for racial discrimination is censure or fines, as Trump was subjected to when the Justice Department found that his housing developments were discriminating against black tenants in the 1970s. Why do these people keep bringing up old crap that's been debunked? You know why? Because the people who are reading NBC News or listening to NBC News do not have access to the facts, and even if they do get curious and seek out the facts, there's so much censorship that they're just blocked from it. It's more difficult to censure voters who have violated their constitutional duties. Nullifying elections would be essentially impossible, but Smith argues that there are options. I think we can dismantle some of the features of the electoral system that encourage radicalized decision-making, he says. All right, so these people are absolutely calling for a coup, and they are calling for the destruction of our republic. Oh my God. For instance, you only get a partisan gerrymander by moving people in and out of districts on the basis of their race. Ending this practice at the state and federal levels would be a big step toward reducing the power of racism at the ballot box, as would ending the use of voter IDs intended to disenfranchise black voters. And then they're using black voters as a scapegoat here. Oh, look at this one here. 43,357 people voted. Do you think racism in America is getting worse? And it's right in the middle. Even more ambitiously, Smith suggests expanding the Voting Rights Act to address the racist patterns of voting in Senate elections in the South, because the majority of white voters in the South vote Republican, and because they outnumber black voters. Since the majority of white people in a white country vote in their white interest, it is now racist. There isn't a single Democratic. Why do they call them Democratic? They're Democrat senators from the deep. I think that's, what is that, Hegelian dialectic? Let's see. There isn't a single Democrat senator from the Deep South or other than Doug Jones in Alabama, who may well lose his seat in 2020. Smith argues that we could remedy these disparate, racially motivated outcomes by creating Senate districts. Presumably, that would make it at least possible for black voters to elect a senator who would support their interests. It is clearly a very controversial proposal, and its constitutionality has been debated in the past. But given obvious disparities in representation in the South, it seems worth considering again. Over the last decade, an increasingly conservative Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act. The Supreme Court did? Okay. And upheld racist gerrymandering. Oh. The conservative Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act. Well, probably because it wasn't constitutional, you stupid fucks. Trump and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, are stacking both the Supreme Court and the federal courts more broadly with conservative judges. Ding, ding, ding. This is very true. This is very true. This is what Trump has been doing. I am not a huge Trump fan, but this is what Trump has been doing. And let's see, and broadly, let's see here. And the prospect for an aggressive legislative response to racist voting seems slim. Means that they can't change the Constitution with their tantrums. Still, Smith points out in the long term, these remedies are a lot more practical than a lot of people might think. Republicans won't always control the presidency, and the Senate and judges don't live forever. Oh my gosh. Democrats could also expand the number of seats on lower courts or even on the Supreme Court, another controversial proposal known as court packing. If Democrats decide that responding to racist voting is a vital priority, they could, in time, take steps to do something about it. No, they can't. They have absolutely no power. We, the people, have voted all these people in. The only way that they can take that away from us is if they cheat, if they bus in illegals and get dead people to vote. And then, their motto is vote early and vote often. Continuing on, it's difficult to address injustice. However, if you're unwilling to say injustice exists, politicians and pundits, Republican and Democrat, I'm not going to say Democratic anymore, Democrat alike have been unwilling to reprimand voters or hold them accountable, but voters are not well-intentioned innocents who are helplessly manipulated by malevolent leaders. Oh my gosh. They make important decisions as constitutional actors for which they have moral responsibility. Racist voting isn't an accident. It's a choice that may violate the principles of our Constitution and our legal system. We should say so, and then we should find ways to reduce the harm it causes. This Noah Berlatsky, another Berg, is a freelance writer and cultural critic based in Chicago. He edits the website The Hooded Utilitarian. Wow, what a name. And is the author of several books, including, most recently, Wonder Woman, Bondage and Feminism in the Marston Peter Comics. Bondage and Feminism? All right, white people, that's the damage for today. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to your comments below.